to the Marin Energy Authority Board meeting for Thursday, November 1st. Looking at the agenda, we'll start with item 1, board announcements. Seeing none. Item 2, public open time. Any members of the public wishing to speak on matters not on the agenda? Okay, it doesn't look like that. Item 3 is report from executive director. We're going to be hearing from Don, but first, actually, it's my pleasure to announce that we have a new board member here tonight from the city of Richmond, City Council member Connolly. Welcome, Tom, and we're actually going to swear you in formally here. Don is going to do the honors.
Great, so please stand and repeat after me. I, Tom Butt, do solemnly swear or affirm
I, Tom Butt, do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and I pledge true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservations or
purpose of evasion,
We skipped over that
I'm having trouble. I've got a cold, my ears are stopped up, so forgive me. All right.
so speak up, no problem. And that I will well and faithfully
And that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome.
Okay, Don.
Put him
you're
next to Len.
the new guy, right?
We're subjecting him to the worst.
Well, they couldn't put him next to me, so. Right? So,
On that note, Don.
I have a couple of items this evening. The first is I just wanted to let folks know that we are in the process of exploring some expansion for our office. We're looking at a couple of options for some additional space because we are really busting at the seams. We've got a lot of folks in the office and not quite enough desks for everyone that's needed. So we're in discussions about that, and you can look for something on next month's board agenda. I expect we'll see some agreements there for an expansion to our space, and also we'll need to renew our agreement with Paytech that provides our phone services so that we can add a couple of lines there. The next item is I just wanted to provide an update that we are in the process of developing a contract with the Sonoma County Water Agency to provide some advisory services to Sonoma related to their CCA efforts, and there'll be more updates on that as we move forward. And then the next item is I would like to introduce Emily Goodwin, who has joined us. And Emily's sitting in the back row there, observing. Welcome, Emily. She has joined our team to provide support for many of our internal operations activities, including budget and cash flow oversight, managing reporting obligations for the agency, board and committee support, and mid-management support for our office management and our human resources team. So it's been a great relief to have Emily with us over the last few weeks. She actually comes to us with a lot of utility experience, both from PG&E and SPG Solar, but we still like you. She also has years of project management experience, including budget development and management, analysis and reporting in the private and nonprofit sector. And her bachelor's degree is from San Diego State University, not too far away, and her master's degree in applied science is from San Francisco State. So welcome, Emily. We're really glad to have you with us. The next item I wanted to update folks on is our technical committee meeting for the month of November has been moved. It typically is held on a Monday, but this month, because of Veterans Day holiday, we needed to move the date, and it landed on November 16th, which is a Friday. It will be at 1:30 p.m. And so our agenda on the website will reflect that date and time just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention because it's not the normal time of that meeting. We will be discussing our community solar program at that meeting, along with a couple of other TechCom related items, so we hope folks can join us. The next update I wanted to provide, to get a save the date on your calendar, we have firmed up a location and time for the holiday party for this year. It's going to be held on December 21st.
That was kind of important stuff.
From 6:30 to 10 at the Falkirk in Santa Fe. So we're really excited about the venue. There's plenty of parking. I know that was an issue last time. We will be using the traditional potluck format and white elephant gift exchange. So start thinking about what you want to contribute on that front.
What day was it?
December 21st. It's a Friday. And the last is just a reminder to all board members that you should have a password on your iPad. If you don't already, you can see Sarah or Darlene or Beth after the meeting, and they can assist you with getting that set up before you leave today. And that's it for my report.
Great, any questions for Dawn? Okay. Members of the public on Dawn's report? Item 4 is consent calendar. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review. I'll entertain a motion if we don't have questions.
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? That matter carries. Okay, item 5 is communications update.
Great.
Jamie.
Thanks so much. I just have a few things to report out today, and I have a PowerPoint presentation. And wrong one, sorry.
That's all right.
Well, the first thing that I wanted to let everyone know about, I'm sure you are already aware, is that last week on Wednesday the 24th, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony at the San Rafael Airport, and that was to announce the completion of the largest solar installation in Marin County, which is a really exciting project. It was our first feed-in tariff project. Construction started in July, and we wrapped up and made it go live early last week. And the whole project resulted in installing more than 4,500 panels on 48 different hangar rooftops. Are we having a little technical difficulty?
I'm looking for it, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just pick one.
Actually, everyone's PowerPoint should be in your board packet, so you should have the printed PowerPoint if you just want to reference that. Oh, and you have your handy dandy iPad, so that'll work as well. I'm looking at the second slide right now that's titled Solar at San Rafael Airport. So we're really excited that this project has gone live. The ribbon cutting ceremony was well attended, and it was definitely a successful event. The project is owned by the San Rafael Airport, and it was a really great example of connecting local businesses and boosting our local economy. The project was installed by a company based in Muir Beach called Synapse Electric, and it was designed by a San Rafael-based company called Rep Energy. We work with the Marin City Community Development Corporation and a trade staffing company called CLP Resources that has an office in San Rafael to hire 20 workers to help with the installation project process that started in July. Another really great thing about this project is that 85% of those panels that were used are American made, and all of the inverters were also American made. So I included some photos of the solar panels in your PowerPoint, which are really great, and we just got a video back today from the Marin Media Center that'll be posted on our website of the event, and I'll circulate that link so that you all can take a look at it for those who aren't able to attend. Moving on from the San Rafael Airport project, I just wanted to let you all know about a couple of advertisements and sponsorships that we recently entered into. We booked a full-page ad in the Central Marin Community Mapbook, and that's going to be distributed mid-November, so in just a couple of weeks, and 25,000 copies get distributed in the mail. It's used by realtors as well to be distributed to people who are new to Marin or buying homes, and it's also distributed in libraries and by the Chamber of Commerce. And the other thing that we're doing, which is perfect for the season, is sponsoring the Marin on Ice skating rink that's going to be at the San Rafael Terralinda shopping mall. So this year there will be an ice skating rink that we can all go to, and there will be a nice banner with the Marine Clean Energy ad. And we'll also have our logo on their website. And the last thing I wanted to report on is that is the progress that APCO has made. You may remember that we entered in a contract with APCO to conduct a survey questionnaire in Marin and Richmond for residential and commercial customers. That was wrapped up early this week, so the surveys are complete, and right now APCO is in the process of evaluating all of the responses, creating a reputation model, and an analysis that will be used to direct communication plans and messaging going forward in Marin and Richmond. And so we're really excited to meet with them at the next executive committee meeting, which is scheduled for November 21st. It's a Wednesday and it's at 9 a.m. APCO will be at that meeting to report all of the information, and I invite you all to attend. So that is it for my update. Any questions?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'll ask a question, I can't let her go that easy. Jamie, have you had any initial feedback from the APCO information? You have some sense of, I'll just look underneath your arm like that too. So, what are you thinking? Have you got some initial feedback from them?
Well, it's great that they've been able to complete all of the calls on time as projected. It was a large number of phone banking that they needed to do. And we have weekly meetings with them where I get an update from them each week. Things have been going well, and right now they're really just in the process, I mean, as in starting yesterday, of accumulating all the information and analyzing it. But they think that they've got plenty of information and feedback to develop a good platform for our messaging in Richmond. One of the other things that APCO also decided to work on was an additional questionnaire for, I believe, 50 people in Richmond. That was about sort of branding and naming for Marine Clean Energy. So it was in addition to what we had originally developed with APCO. So there will be new supplemental information that will help with the naming and branding of Marine Clean Energy, specifically in Richmond.
Do they get any direct feedback or information from the city of Richmond, for folks that might have some idea of how the kinds of questions to ask there and the ways that things might be effective to market Marine Clean Energy? I'm just asking if there was direct questioning to the city of Richmond representatives.
Well, what they did in August before the survey commenced was in-depth interviews with people in the city of Richmond. So those in-depth interviews were used to help form the survey, but the information there will also be used to help with the communications outreach and strategy. And so those in-depth interviews combined with the information from the surveys will be used to provide a platform for us, which is what they're going to be delivering at the executive committee.
Any further questions for Jamie? Members of the public on the communications report? Okay, item 6 is regulatory update. Beth?
I know, this is so early in the evening, I don't really know what to say
I
about
don't
it.
know if we're that yet.
I have everybody's attention, this is great. And actually, it's a little bit of a wasted moment, because this is a little bit of a lighter month for regulatory. What we find is it's sort of a cyclical path that comes through the year. The final commission meeting of the year is going to be on December 20th, which means that all of the proposed decisions that the commission wants to push out by the end of the year need to be out by November 20th. And so there's a lot of targeting for that date for the commission to issue decisions by that time. This past month there weren't too many filings, but we are working on certain proactive steps that I'm going to be happy to share with you next month. So one of the issues that has come up this month, which is really going for those original board members, is going back in the day, is the CCA bond. So we post a bond with Public Utilities Commission. The bond is currently set at $100,000. So we have posted that with the commission, and it's intended to protect against involuntary returns of customers. So if MEA were to spontaneously dissolve and we couldn't give notice about the return of our customers, that is what it's intended to cover. So it's a very small risk, but there is bond in place for it. So this interim bond amount was approved in 2007. A new methodology was developed during a fairly turbulent and nascent time for CCA. The parties to the settlement were the investor-owned utilities, TURN, which is the Utility Reform Network, that they customarily represent bundled customer interests, particularly residential bundled customer interests, and the San Joaquin Valley Power Authority, which was the first one to put out an implementation plan for CCA, and also the city of Victorville, which has since also stopped pursuing CCA. This motion for settlement has not been approved. The consequences of the methodology that's in there result in some significant unfairness and volatility for CCAs. It wasn't negotiated with the existing CCA parties, so we weren't a party to the settlement, neither was the city and county of San Francisco. Anyway, so this settlement has sort of been not acted upon for the past 3.5 years. And recently, and unfortunately, San Joaquin Valley Power Authority has decided to dissolve and not pursue CCA. So they were never serving customers. They had faced some significant PG&E opposition, and in the end decided that they could no longer continue the CCA process. So SJVPA filed a motion to withdraw from the proceeding. So that's the R03-1003 CCA rulemaking. This is sort of the mother proceeding of CCA, where many core CCA issues related to the development of CCA in California started. So SJVPA wanted to withdraw from the proceeding and also from this settlement, which has been outstanding for several years. PG&E and Southern California Edison responded to this motion by agreeing that SJVPA, which is dissolved and no longer exists, should be allowed to leave the rulemaking. However, they should not be allowed to leave the settlement. And furthermore, that the settlement should be adopted because it's reasonable in light of the record. We disagree, and we actually filed comments today to that effect, and also that are, acknowledging the role that SJVPA played in California that really paved the way for us to exist as a CCA. So I'll keep you posted on any developments on the bond front. It is entirely up to the commission whether they decide to take action either on the settlement or starting a new analysis of what a bond should look like. We've recommended that the interim bond remain in place for another 3 years, and that once we have at least another CCA up and running at that point in time, we can negotiate with the commission and the investor utilities to determine what a reasonable amount is for that methodology. The next item is we did file testimony in the PG&E green option, which is essentially a PG&E program that looks an awful lot like Deep Green. It is sort of a 100% renewable product and equivalent pricing. It looks very similar. In our testimony, we raised several issues relating to participation rates in green community choice aggregators, how this might impact communities considering CCA implementation that have more of a green bent, net effects on communities' efforts to reduce GHGs, and any anti-competitive effects of the green option. Essentially what our concern is, we believe that CCA is a much more effective option of achieving green objectives since it's an opt-out program rather than an opt-in program. And so what we don't want to see is a chilling effect on green CCAs or communities being dissuaded from launching green CCAs because the impact was gonna be that much greater. So those are our primary concerns there, and obviously we're also taking a look to ensure that there's not gonna be any cost shifting that would negatively impact our customers or, impact sensitization of PG&E's customers being on this rate. The next item that I just wanna touch on is there's a new residential rate design rulemaking. I don't think that our involvement here is going to be too in-depth, but what we do want to ensure is that the rate design, any residential rate design is harmonized with SB 790, which is the recent last year CCA legislation. One of the keys to this is stability, simplicity, and customer choice, and we have very much emphasized the customer choice aspect of this. We should feel that CCA customers, any residential customer should be indifferent. They should have a choice as to whether they're a CCA customer or a bundled customer. And then furthermore, we noted a couple of issues that relate to net energy metering and conservation incentive adjustment. I won't go into that there, but sometimes based on how certain rates are calculated, customers might not be indifferent based on certain rate structures and timing issues. So that's getting into the weeds, but that's the overall gist of what we've been looking at in the past month. And we'll have, I'm assuming, quite a lot more to share next month as proposed decisions come out. Are there any questions? Yes?
I couldn't help noticing last week PG&E announced a 10% increase in sales and some increased profit too, which leads me to think that the PCIA charge might be timely to review that charge, reopen that proceeding.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me if sales are increasing, there's really no reason for us to be subsidizing a loss that's not occurring.
Yes.
Particularly if Richmond is looking to get that cost subsidized by the agency for care customers in your jurisdiction. And so, is there any possibility our agency could reopen that proceeding?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think that there's a recognition from some higher ups that I mean, in essence, you're absolutely right. Is right now the exact moment to reopen that? It's something that we're continually looking into, and I imagine that it will be corrected, hopefully in the not too distant future. As regards to care subsidizations, that is an issue that we have previously dealt with, and so the care subsidy is collected from all distribution customers, and then the rate is returned to customers through the distribution rate. So we haven't seen any anti-competitive impacts there since that care discount responsibility remains with PG&E. But yes, I think that the issue of how non-bypassable charges generally impact CCA and CCA customers is something that we're keenly aware of, and we look forward to taking action on that in the future.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Beth, in regard to that article, unless I misread it, it said their profits were up 50%. Is that not true? And my question is, how do they, after all their adversity over the past 2 years, how do they increase their profits 50%, or did I misread that?
No, I mean, it actually said third quarter earnings, net income almost doubled to $384 million.
So it was doubled, actually, it was more than.
And that sales had increased 10%. That's from the San Francisco Chronicle last week.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on how all those things work over at PG&E, and but I do know that they have guaranteed rates of return on equity. If I'm recalling right, it's somewhere around 6 or 8% or something, and so it's better than you're going to get at a CD at the bank. So there's definitely room for profitability, which that's just another compelling component of CCA, and the fact that we can, drive what would otherwise be profit back into the community or reduce rates. But yeah, I know that Turn, so the utility reform network looks closely at that. But obviously that's not our involvement at the commission.
No, but there's a correlation between that and the PCIA charge.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And, sort of all of how long should all of these non-bypassable charges continue to exist? What is fair for customers, and how do you strike the right balance? It's
Well,
definitely.
I guess a continuation of what you're saying is instead of buying new energy for the new customers, they could just reprogram the energy that they're charging their old customers from the PCIA charge.
Yeah, well, I didn't quite follow that. I'm
Well,
sorry.
They say the number of customers are increasing,
Yeah,
so they're buying new energy for those new customers.
correct.
Instead of going out to buy new energy, why couldn't they simply reprogram the energy for which we are paying in our PCIA charge, which they're probably reprogramming anyway? There's no sense in just letting it sit there.
That's exactly accurate. And so, since there's load growth with bundled customers, that is an issue. So, I would say that just going back to the victories that we had in the past, there have been significant revisions to the PCIA recently, which significantly reduced that. That involved a lot of work by John and a lot of other folks in the large coalition. So, we've made enormous steps there, but there's still a long way to go, and we acknowledge that. I'm not leaving, I'm
It's
leaving
not a
next soon,
criticism,
so.
that's not a criticism, it's just.
Yeah, no, I absolutely,
We
I
actually
hear
have
you.
some work going on right now that relates to this, that we'll be able to report on as well.
Beth, on PG&E's green program, I'm glad to see we're kind of taking an aggressive approach to make sure that their program is implemented fairly, basically, that it's not a vehicle for cost shifting inappropriately, et cetera. I will note, though, in the larger sense, that the fact that they're making this move, I think, reaffirms that our competition in the marketplace is encouraging them to take this kind of step toward their own version of more green energy programs. So I think in that spirit, why don't we for sure, and we've talked about this over time and even again more recently, make sure that we are doing everything we can to get the word out on our 100% deep green product and take the competition to them, so to speak, while also making sure on a regulatory basis that the playing field remains fair. So good work on that. Was that it for your report?
that's it for my report.
Okay. Any further questions for Beth? From board or public? Okay, seeing that. Barbara George is in here. Oh, there you are.
Well, there's an energy efficiency report, we haven't.
We'll get to energy. All right, we'll get to, Barbara, I didn't see you arrive late. I was like, okay. We'll get to energy efficiency in a bit. Item 7 is actually an important one that we've all been working very hard on. The MC Integrated Resource Plan, which we took up, as you all remember, at our board retreat. Great feedback came out of that. It subsequently has been through a couple of committee meetings. John has taken the lead on doing a great job, I think, in getting this together. And really, we're hoping it will function as our blueprint on how we procure our energy resources going forward. So John, I assume you're going to take the lead here?
Yeah, thanks, Damon. We can just go ahead and kick over to the first slide. So, thanks for covering the background there. This document is really the first time that we've put together a standalone resource plan since the original implementation plan was done back in, I guess that was 2009. So, the purpose here really is simply to describe how MEA intends to supply its customers with electricity and related services over a 10-year planning horizon, reasonable kind of forward-looking planning period, in ways that meet the goals and objectives that have been established for the MCE program. The primary purpose, if you think of it, there's one part sort of quantity, sort of numbers, one part policy, and one part process. So the plan, it quantifies resource needs, customer enrollment forecast, load forecast, the types of renewable energy that is needed, and other types of resources that are needed. So there's, part of this is a numerical exercise, a quantitative exercise. But really an important part of this document is policy, and it's prioritizing the types of resources that this agency wants management, wants staff to go out and procure. And that gets to things like the overall renewable energy content, some of this subcategorization, some of the local programs that are included in the plan. And then the third part, the process, is really what are the mechanics, what are the ways in which MEA will go about procuring energy, and also some discussion of certain streamlined processes that we'll get into. Go to the next one, please. So, the basic policies here that are reflected in the plan are shown here. It's fundamentally to do our best, in effect, to reduce pollution from the energy that folks in Marin consume. But do that in a way where we're able to offer competitive rates. Not only competitive, but also stable over time. Another objective is to really benefit the local economy through new programs, new infrastructure, and particularly renewable energy projects. The airport project is tangible. It's a great example of the value of MEA in sort of providing a little bit of a boost to the economy through these local programs. And also to help reduce customers' energy use through new energy efficiency programs and other demand-side programs. And so the combination, I think, of helping to reduce demand and also boosting supply can't help but to improve the reliability of the system. So these are kind of the high-level planning policies that are then translated into more specific procurement targets in the plans. So in terms of some of the highlights, and just starting with resource targets, the plan sets forth the policy that MEA will maintain at least a 50% renewable energy content. It's actually a little bit greater than that, but also make progress towards the ultimate goal of 100% renewable energy. There are specific plans in place, sort of a direct path to achieving the 50%, and the additional moving towards 100% is more of an aspirational goal, and that was some of the feedback that we received at the offsite, is really trying to push the envelope and not be content at just hitting a 50% content and sort of calling it good. So that's reflected in this revised plan, is really a goal to move towards that over time. The second major piece of this is really what I would consider a massive increase in local renewable resources that are standalone, that is projects like the airport project that are developed in response to MEA's feed-in tariff or some other power purchase agreement. Effectively, we've gone from 0 local megawatts of these types of projects. I mean, PG&E had something like a 65 kilowatt project, a tiny little thing, to now we have 1 megawatt, and the plan includes moving that up to 10 megawatts. So really, very large increases in local renewable generation is being targeted here. And also on the customer side, so through our net energy metering tariff, about a 3.5 times increase in those types of projects. So these would be typically rooftop solar projects that are behind the meter that reduce the spin the meter backwards. Trying to push that to 20 megawatts. So overall, we would have 20 megawatts on the net energy metering and another 10 megawatts on the FIT by the end of the planning period, the next 10 years. And then on the demand side, calls for really sizable reductions in energy consumption through the new energy efficiency programs that you've heard about, recently getting kicked off, and also some demand response programs that have not yet been developed, but we anticipate developing those over the next several years. So graphically, you can see the progression here. So overall renewable content, kind of the core target here of 50%, and and it shows here what we'd expect, we'd expect that to be broken up among the various kind of contracting types, the different buckets of renewables. So the sort of the bundled renewable energy down there on the bottom, category 1, category 2, then the category 3 renewables. And then we have this sort of light green bar there, which we've labeled potential renewable, and these are not yet identified, but these are really kind of more of the stretch target. You can see that as the renewable content grows over time, then obviously the non-renewable piece of the supply picture diminishes. So that's what we're trying to move towards. In terms of then, part of this plan is to say, okay, where do we want to get and what do we have under contract, and so what is the kind of the difference there, and what do we need to procure to get there? So in terms of what we have, right now, MEA has 14 different energy contracts with 11 different suppliers. The vast majority of those are renewable projects that have been contracted through the open season and through RFPs and through, over the last 2 years. Really the focus of MEA's procurement has been on renewable projects and making good progress there. So basically where MEA is that we've contracted for almost the entirety of the identified bundled renewable energy needs through 2016. So in terms, when we're out now talking to developers for new long-term power purchase agreements with renewable projects, we're basically telling them 2017 is what we're looking for, 2017 and beyond. For the non-renewable energy, MEA is pretty much fully contracted through the end of 2017, so it's open starting in 2018. And then for capacity, contracts are in place for virtually all of the need through 2015. Really through most of it through the end of 2014, and then there's open positions starting in 2015. So, as we go out and as the plan describes, the overall approach here on procurement is to ensure that there's a lot of diversity in the portfolio, and really that's an attempt to make sure it's really a risk management strategy where we've got a lot of relatively small contracts with a lot of different counterparties, a lot of different suppliers, different technologies preferably, different production profiles. So we don't want to put all our eggs in the solar basket, for instance. We would like to mix that up with some other more baseload renewable projects. And also we've been pretty disciplined about not buying all of MEA's needs at any one point in time and kind of hitting the market a little bit at a time over time. Again, this is an attempt in making sure that there is quite a bit of diversity in the portfolio, both in terms of the resources and the time at which you sign the contract, because prices oftentimes go up, but lately they've been going down significantly, particularly for solar projects. So we've been able to benefit from those new lower prices by just being disciplined in the way that we've been accessing the market. In terms of just overall procurement policy, so we're transitioning really from the original full requirements contract that was established to kick off the program. Originally, there was a contract with Shell Energy North America. They provided all the power. And over time, we're moving off of that. And as I said, the renewable contracts, that's been the focus of the effort. What we're working on and will soon be moving into is more on the non-renewable side. And so next year, you'll see we're going to be moving into starting to buy capacity independently to start filling the open position that begins in 2015. And then after that, then we'll be moving into sort of independent power procurement program for the non-renewable energy. We've got a little bit more time on that. We've got till, need the power in 2018. You start buying it around maybe 2015, so you want to layer that in. But that's kind of the transition plan that is laid out in the integrated resource plan. Go to the next one here. And then in terms of the process, the methods, so there are really four kind of primary procurement strategies or methods that MEA has used and will continue to use. The first one is just the sort of bilaterally negotiated agreements. And this is appropriate for standardized products where there's a lot of price transparency, where the price is known in the market, and so there's really not much of a need to go through a competitive process in order to ensure that you're getting a competitively priced product. So that's common for really short-term power purchase transactions, standardized energy, typically non-renewable energy, or maybe RECs. Those markets are kind of characterized by that, and it's typically those deals are just either brokered or bilaterally negotiated. For longer-term projects or longer-term contracts, particularly where there's a defined need that says, hey, we really need some peak renewable energy starting in 2017. You've got a long lead time. Those typically you're going to use a competitive solicitation or request for an RFP process for that. And we've done that in the past, and we anticipate continuing to do that, primarily again for sort of medium to long-term power purchase agreements with renewable providers. And then for less urgent needs, a little bit more opportunistic, we have our open season process, and I think most folks are familiar with that, but this is where we have kind of an open window where we will review unsolicited proposals that come in. We get a lot of excellent proposals that way, and some really timely information, market information about pricing trends and availability. And that's done annually, but there's not necessarily a defined need. It's not that we put out a solicitation and said, hey, we're looking for this. It's more what comes across, and we take advantage of good opportunities when we see them, if they fit with the portfolio. And then we find that we have a real streamlined procurement process for local renewable projects like the airport project. It's really a very attractive price and contracting process, and it's really designed to encourage local renewable development and accelerate that. So those are the four methods that we would continue to use, and those are described a little bit more detail in the plan. And then in terms of as MEA moves away from this one supplier, one contract model to many suppliers, many contracts, it's appropriate also for the procurement process to evolve as well. And so the plan describes a hierarchy of procurement authority, which depending on the nature of the commitment, would either be the full board would be required to approve the agreement, or if it's something less significant, maybe a relatively short-term purchase, then that authority would be delegated to management. And this next table shown here summarizes the various criteria that would apply to these different types of power purchases or these different types of resource commitments. So starting with really the policy and the resource targets, those are reflected in the resource plan itself. And that is a document that would be adopted by the board on an annual basis. So that really sets the framework for any of the procurement activity that would take place. And then moving down, you know, any capital project, let's say there's an opportunity for MEA to finance and own a generation project, because of the nature of that commitment, it's appropriate that that be brought to the full board. Likewise, anything involving issuance of debt, there might be an opportunity to prepay power, anything that would involve debt, obviously that is appropriate to bring to the full board. Those are not necessarily transactions that have to happen in any sort of operational time frame. There's no reason not to bring that to the board. Long-term contracts, and here we're delineating contracts that are 5 years, greater than 5 years in duration. Similarly, those can be, typically are fairly significant commitments, and those also would be require full board pre-approval before those are executed. Then when we get down to some of the shorter term, really the medium term and shorter term, that's where we start to see some streamlining in the process. And so for medium term contracts, these would be power purchase agreements between 1 and 5 years. The process would be, assuming that this is made pursuant to adopted resource plan, that this fits in with the targets and with the types of resources that are approved in the plan, then the authority would be, so it would be the executive director and the board chair would have the authority to enter into those agreements, subject to consultation with a committee of the board. So there would be a process where a committee would be briefed on the agreement. Of course, the committee could refer that to the full board if the members felt that that was appropriate. But otherwise, the executive director and the board chair would be authorized to execute that agreement. Any agreements along those lines or that are executed through that process would be reported monthly to the full board. So every month there would be a report back of whether there were any agreements that were executed there. And then with short-term contracts, these are less than 1 year. So these are typically, there's not a lot of time. These are not something that you want to take 2 to 3 months to kind of vet with various committees and whatnot. The executive director would be authorized to execute those as long as the nature of the procurement was consistent with an adopted resource plan. Again, there would be a monthly reporting obligation or a monthly reporting process for any of the transactions that were made that way. And then finally, to the extent there's any other procurement that's not contemplated in the resource plan or otherwise doesn't fit any of these criteria, then those would necessarily be brought to the board for approval prior to execution. So that is it in a nutshell. So happy to take any questions.
Director Rafael.
So thanks for that presentation, John. Help me out. So we're the board and you have this incredibly complex system where you've got all the procurement, all the different kinds of contracts, all the different types of energy. How do we make sure, from a risk management standpoint, that we don't run out of energy for our customers? For example, help me out with, we have, I guess 12 cities plus the county and so many customers. Do we have just enough energy every year, or do we have extra capacity, and is that something we pay for, like as a reserve? How does that work?
Right, so I think where it starts really is in the resource plan. And, and that's where we show how many resources we need based on the load, and then how many are in the contract. And if you look at that over time, 1 year out, you've effectively got all of it under contract, plus a reserve, right? I mean, that's a.
So I didn't say plus what?
Plus a reserve. So if if you project your customers need 100 megawatts peak next year, then we would have 115 megawatts under contract.
Is that what it is, typically 15%
Well,
is
that's
typical reserve?
PUC
Yeah,
regulation.
on a year ahead basis. Now, when you go further out in time, then, you know, you don't have all of that under contract. You start to leave some of that open, right? And so the amount that you purchase forward sort of declines as a percentage of, because you're constantly rolling this forward. And so, you know, you get it a year later, so you might only have 30 to 50% of your power needs contracted, 5-6 years out. So, you know, as you get closer to, the day that you actually need the power, as you get closer to real time, then all that stuff, you've got power in place, plus you have required reserves. So I think it starts with the implementation, the resource plan, where you can see where the agency is from a resource perspective and where it needs to go. And like I said, what you'll see is, like right now, the agency has all the resources it needs in effect, on the conventional resources anyway, through 2017. So, there isn't any risk there of not having sufficient resource, or even if something were to happen to prices in the market, if there was some kind of a price spike, the agency is protected from that for the next 5 years. And then so what happens in year 6? Well, you start to fill that in. So by the time we get to year 6, you'll have a similar type of a situation in place.
So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, is that projected need includes Richmond?
Yes.
And what is our projected need?
Well, overall energy, it's about 1.2 million megawatt hours per year. That's, the full year of Richmond, customer enrolled. So that's
Marin and Richmond combined.
Marin and Richmond combined, yeah.
Director, another question.
I lost it. So, it's my.
Why,
it's
so
okay.
you were gonna talk about the.
Oh, I can talk
approvals.
about that too, but, you think the question, how it goes. I was looking on the procurement authorities, slide that you had up, just as a suggestion, on the short-term energy contracts where it says executive director would make the decision. I would just suggest that the board chair should be a co-signer or co-decision maker with the executive director, just so not any one person is making a decision. I'm just throwing that out because I realize that the goal is speed because of that, but if the board chair isn't available, the executive director will have a problem. So I'm sure that should be something easy to accomplish. I would just throw that as a suggestion.
Yeah, I think the problem with that suggestion is that, what we're envisioning here is over time, some of these might be power purchases for the next day, right? And so do you really want to, be involving the board chair in those types of decisions? That's really more of an operational function, right? And so I think that, I wouldn't recommend that process for short-term purchases. I think it's not such an issue now because MEA is not really making those types of purchases, but that's where we're going. And so I think it's be wise to set up the system anticipating where we're going, and I don't think that would be workable in the long term.
Okay.
I have confidence in our director.
Oh, I do too, Tammy. You don't have to take 2 shots.
John, I have a question is practically in terms of how, when you have, I think you said about 4 different timelines in terms of when you need to have power quotas hit, and a number of different types of contracts. How, as a practical matter, do you ensure your ability to stay on top of all of those moving targets? There's a lot to keep track of.
There is a lot to keep track of, and that is a large percentage of our time, my time, Kirby's time in particular, keeping on top of those requirements. Because you're right, there's year ahead obligations, and there's compliance fines. Yeah, we
Right.
have to prove this all up in advance, and then there's month ahead, and then there's RPS, and then there's daily schedules, which we use Shell, to sort of manage those transactions today, anyway. So I think, we've got a pretty good system in place, to handle all that. And as the, number of contracts grow, we're in the process of putting a contract management system in place to be able to, make sure that, our counterparties are living up to the terms of the agreement, and we're living up to the
Right.
terms of the agreement as
Right.
well. So, I guess the internal capabilities are they're continuing to be developed, but we're very comfortable with the way that we're managing this now. We haven't had any issues.
No scary moments?
We haven't had any scary moments.
So is it like a backup system? I mean, is it like you have calendar dates and it just pops up, so that a milestone hits, like what Ford was just talking about, okay, I gotta look at
That's
this
absolutely
contractor.
what it is, yeah, that's absolutely what it is. This is something we've kind of given quite a lot of thought to internally, and it's one of those things, much like just resource planning generally, where we're trying to stay one step ahead of the need in putting these systems and processes in place. And so, yeah, that system of reminders is exactly what we're talking about, where we actually comb through all of our agreements, pulled out specific obligations and options that may exist within those different agreements. And if they are date driven or time frame driven, we pulled those out, captured those, and now we're in the process of putting those into a system of reminders so that appropriate individuals are notified when those things come up, and we can keep our counterparties aware of what their obligations are, and stay aware internally of what our obligations are as well.
Yeah, and we're building in redundancies now. I mean, I would say the way
That
it's
was my next
been.
question about redundancies.
Yeah, it has been more sort of one person responsible for it, and what we're in the process of building are kind of multiple people to, making sure, hey, this is due, and yes, I'm aware this is due, the kind of those types of cross checks. So those systems are really being developed, and I think actually the new person that was hired is on top of a lot of that, and that's a lot of what she's going to be doing if I've got it right, Don.
So more than one person sees a deadline, just to.
Exactly, because they are, there's a lot of them, and they seem to be growing and not shrinking in terms of just even the number of regulatory obligations.
Well, in fact, one of the positions that exists on the org chart that has not been filled is a resource coordinator position that would be kind of an internal person that could work with Kirby and John, if I'm correct. Is that right, Don? Further questions or comments for John?
I actually have a question.
Yes.
And
Director
you may
Stahl.
have addressed this in the report, but I'm just curious, because you mentioned on this one chart, the potential renewable is unidentified. And you have it going at a pretty significant increase from like 2017 to 2021. And then under your highlights of draft of your IRP, you talk about a non-renewable energy buying program will also be put into place during the next few years to begin filling the 2018 open energy positions. And I guess what I'm saying is what is your plan for at what point identifying if you're going to be able to have that potential renewable in order to know what your, because it looks like your buying plan would be significantly increased. So I guess I was just curious, since you put this on the slide, at what point do you think you can identify those potential renewable, or at what point will it maybe not increase that significantly and you'll be buying, I'm just curious what that timeline is.
Sari?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and so that potential renewable kind of area there, those are desired, basically desired renewable quantities that we'd like to get to, but we're not sure we can based on economic and operational considerations, right? So we're effectively confident in planning specifically for the 50+%, but that next bar up is a stretch, right? So what we would do and so the question is, well, when you're buying the non-renewable, how do you deal with that, right? So the way that we would deal with that is that we would leave a little bit open, 2 to 3 years out. So, you know, if we're talking about next year, we wouldn't leave any open because there's no time to develop those renewable resources. But when we're looking out, you know, purchasing conventional energy 5 years from now, if we think we need 100, we might buy 80, right? Because we think there's the potential. And then if we get closer, as we get closer in time, and let's say we didn't buy the renewable power, then we would just go ahead and fill it in with the 20. So that's the way that we would anticipate dealing with the sort of the uncertainty there. And that's not that different from any of the other procurement generally. We've got contracts with the 11 different counterparties. A lot of those have not been constructed yet, so there's a chance that some of those could fall through. And so you always have that level of uncertainty, but that's uncertainty that begins a year or two from years from now. You know, when we're dealing with next day and up through the next year, you've got it all locked down. There's no hope involved in
So if I
that
show
time
this
period.
chart to my council, that's a wish, that's a stretch.
That's more of a hope, yeah.
A hope, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I wanted to clarify, so that I
good
didn't
question.
send them off in a wrong direction.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Okay, members of the public. Again, I want to thank everyone for the work that went into this, and John particularly, very good job. Okay, so this is an action item for approval. If there's no further comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Okay, item 8, feed-in tariff program update and expansion, and this will tie into one of your points about our aspiration to expand the feed-in tariff program, so,
Yeah.
Kirby?
Absolutely. Yeah, as you mentioned, Director Connolly, this absolutely ties in with the integrated resource plan we just talked about. And as a matter of fact, since you've just approved that resource plan, it makes sense that we amend the feed-in tariff to be consistent with that plan. So no pressure at all. So in any case, just to kind of turn back the clock, some of this you've already heard. We went over it at the recent board retreat and then talked about it as well in last month's technical committee meeting, and certain members of the board that are on that committee, I would invite to weigh in on this discussion since you were there the first go round. But in any case, this program, this feed-in tariff program, was originally launched by your board back in December of 2010, so coming up on 2 years ago now. And the idea with the feed-in tariff was to provide an opportunity for locally situated, smaller scale renewable resources to supply the energy requirements of Marin Clean Energy customers. And when we originally launched that program, we did so at a point in time when we had a relatively small customer base. And in light of recent expansion and planned future expansion, it was appropriate to review the feed-in tariff to include certain changes in recognition of those planned customer expansions that have recently occurred and will occur in the not too distant future. So one of the specific changes that was mentioned during the previous discussion was expanding the participatory cap of the feed-in tariff from 2 megawatts to 10 megawatts. And so this is one of the revisions, proposed revisions, that's reflected in the draft document that you have in your board packet this evening. And hopefully you all, I believe, have a copy of the red line version of the feed-in tariff, which will certainly highlight the changes that are being proposed. One of the other elements that's being recommended as a change to the feed-in tariff is an expansion of the eligible service territory to include all member jurisdictions. jurisdictions. Obviously, we have our newest member with us this evening, and it's only appropriate now to expand the eligible service territory, not just to include Marin County, but all jurisdictions now, including the city of Richmond as well. And then the last recommended change is really related to the pricing schedules that are reflected in the feed-in tariff. And hopefully, if you don't have the document open, I would direct you to I believe it's the third page of the feed-in tariff where that pricing schedule has been pasted. And what the ultimate goal here is in making these suggested revisions to the pricing schedule is to balance the competing interests of providing strong incentives to local renewable energy developers and minimized financial impacts to MC customers. And so what we did in taking a look at the existing pricing schedules is we, one, realized that the pricing schedule would only accommodate development timelines that extended through the 2013 calendar year. Where we're at now, nearing the end of 2012, we really need to move this from more of a pilot program, which it has been, to more of a program that's going to exist in perpetuity, acknowledging that many of these projects, in order to get to the 10 megawatts, will take a number of years to put in place. And so lifting that time-sensitive boundary, if you will, on pricing was one thing that we wanted to do. Another was we also wanted to put certain incentives in place for kind of first-to-market projects, if you will, to incentivize near-term action by developers. And one of the ways that we did that is we cited 5 conditions, and these conditions are all based on various breakpoints, if you will, that are set in 2 megawatt increments. And so the idea is that there would be a gradual decline in the price that would be offered in the feed-in tariff. And that generally makes sense because there have been very significant reductions in photovoltaic solar pricing over the last couple of years. And one of the things that I think we want to recognize is technological improvements are likely to continue, and it would be our hope that over time, these prices would still be supportive of local renewable project development at a very high level. And of course, if we observe along the way that these prices aren't supporting local renewable development at a level that we'd like to see, we can always go back and revise these prices. So this is really kind of a snapshot in time that we will go back and review likely on an annual basis to make sure that the pace of development is satisfactory to your board. And if that's the case, we'll leave the prices unchanged. And if not, we can revisit how it is that we might want to structure these to promote additional renewable project development. But I think one of the kind of key features to highlight in this pricing schedule is that the price won't be reduced for subsequent projects until the capacity limit, the specified capacity limit, has been surpassed. So for example, our most recent feed-in tariff project, the San Rafael Airport, it's close to 1 megawatt, but it's not exactly 1 megawatt, it's 972 kilowatts. And you can imagine if we had 2 of those projects under contract, we wouldn't exactly be at our first 2 megawatt hurdle just yet, we'd be right under it. And we don't want to impose a penalty on the next project to hop in the queue because they surpass that 2 megawatt limit. So we're going to go ahead and give that project the highest possible price per the schedule until we surpass that burden. So hopefully that makes sense to you all, and I think the language here kind of captures that fairly well. And I think we've had some discussions recently with a couple of interested feed-in tariff project developers. Actually, today we had discussions with 2 of them, and they both looked at this in a very favorable light because there was some initial concern when they heard about feed-in tariff revisions that there might be some sort of reduction without a consideration of how this would affect the development community, and I think they were appreciative of the fact that we weren't really imposing any penalties by doing this. We were trying to give the highest possible price, the highest possible incentives to these local projects so that we could get as many of these megawatts under contract as possible and promote local renewable project development. So
each project itself would still be 1 megawatt or less.
Correct. That hasn't changed, and that's something that I think for the time being, there are a number of reasons for leaving that 1 megawatt limit in place, one of which is related to interaction with the California Independent System Operator, and once you surpass that 1 megawatt limit, you create certain obligations, registration and scheduling obligations that we avoid by keeping these projects at or below 1 megawatt. So this is not only to promote administrative simplicity for MEA, but it also creates some incentives for the developer as well, minimizing costs and so forth. So anyway, those are really the proposed revisions. There's 3 of them: increase in the participatory cap, expansion of the eligible service territory, and a restructuring of the price schedule. And just like to note that the price that will remain effective in the near term is directly pulled from our existing feed-in tariff. So interested developers will notice no change in the short term. So this is something that will kind of condition them over time. That's all I have.
Yeah, it's been very encouraging to see the interest in participating in this, so I think it certainly makes sense. Any board members have any questions or comments on this side? Again, it's consistent with our resource plan, which we just approved. Members of the public? Okay, well, I'll bring it back to the board then. And this is an action item to approve these recommended changes. Can I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Okay, item 9, Energy Efficiency Program Update. Becky.
Hi. I'm going to go ahead and move to the dais so I give you some visual interest moving your eyes from one place to another. I'm just sitting in front of the screen. So hello, my name is Becky Munson. I'm the Efficiency Coordinator, and since I've been hired, we've had an opportunity to get this program moving a little bit. So I'm here to talk to you about some of the things that we've been doing over the past month or so. I guess it only has been a month. So I just wanted to give you a quick roadmap. We're going to talk a little bit about the 2012 program. I'll talk about the 2013-2014 proposed decision, which was released by the Public Utilities Commission on the 9th of October. And then we'll talk about how we're moving forward with planning for implementation of the 2013-2014 program. The 2012 efficiency program, there's a couple distinct points to keep in mind about the 2012 program. Due to the way that the funds were collected and the particular statutory right that we chose to pursue in implementing this program, the efficiency services we're offering in the 2012 are only available to marine clean energy customers, not to folks who are not currently customers. Particularly for the city of Richmond, that's relevant because we can only serve people who have actually opted into the deep green option. They're eligible to receive efficiency services. Also, the final program budget we had proposed to the PG, we proposed under the statutory right where we get funds that were collected from our customers. So the CPUC developed a calculation metric, and our total budget wasn't exactly known and won't exactly be known until those funds are fully collected. So our budget is approximately $350,000, which is a little bit less than we thought that we were going to be starting out with. And so we're going to have to do some budgetary adjustments to make up for that. But with all that in mind, we're actually making some pretty good headway. We've been moving forward with finalizing the program processes. We're determining some flow charts to envision what it looks like for a property owner to move from interest to intake, application process, the audit and assessment processes to evaluate the efficiency opportunity at their house, actually get the measures installed, the final QA/QC and quality assurance, quality control on those measures, and then sending them a rebate check so that we have a completed project. Something that we're also considering when we're moving through these program processes is how we want to make them different for more comprehensive opportunities versus shallower opportunities. Whether or not a property owner has funding that they want to contribute to the project, whether or not the funding can be available for low-income sectors. these types of considerations, the type of property owner that we're dealing with, makes a difference in the type of project that we can do. So we're refining the processes that we're envisioning depending on the type of customer that we're dealing with, so we can make sure that we have a customizable program that has the greatest amount of opportunity based on the customer class that we're dealing with. So other things that are exciting that are in the hopper, we've developed an outreach list that I think is really a great example of what can be done with a local program. We took the list of customers that we have, and we were able to identify from that list of customers who our multifamily customers are. We cross-referenced that with assessor data. So now, for all of our customers, we have address data and we have number of units on property. We can tell from the assessor data and from our customer data if it's a master metered property, meaning all of the units are on one account, or if it's individually metered. This is really nice information to have because it all makes a difference in what kind of opportunity you can find. Because of this, we're able to really target the types of people that we think are going to be the best bet. So when we go out and do the outreach, we can actually have a really good opportunity to have efficiencies with that outreach and be guaranteed that we're already targeting people that we think are a good fit. On top of that, we've been working with one of our subcontractors to develop a pre-screening questionnaire. This is something that property owners can fill out immediately and send to us to let us know if we think there is going to be opportunity, if maybe they've already captured a lot of the cost-effective opportunities out there and we think it might not be the best fit. And this is actually something that was included in your board packet. We're working on spiffing it up and making it a little prettier, and we're going to put it on our website so that people can actually fill it out on the website and have some automation to that pre-screening process. Additionally, we're providing this to some of our outreach partners who are able to go out and connect with those property owners and property managers and just provide a really low-cost way of knowing if we're able to move to the next step with them. So we're pretty excited about that. Some of the key objectives that we're trying to achieve in this program is being able to provide as comprehensive of an opportunity as possible with the minimum amount of hassle. One of the ways that we're doing this is when we're developing those flow charts to look at how our program process looks, we're taking note of all the times that we have to knock on a tenant's door, or all the times that we have to go back to the property and take time out of the property manager's day. The minimum amount of time that we can disrupt the tenant and that we can disrupt the property manager, the better the customer experience is going to be with the program. So we're just trying to be really conscious of that as we go forth with designing the way we can do this. Another thing, again, I already mentioned the ability to customize the offering based on those individual properties. If we have a low-income property, we may be bringing in low-income services so that we can enhance the offering for somebody who doesn't have that much capital to bring to the property. For someone who does have more capital, we can bring on energy auditors who can do some deeper calculations and maybe provide for some more comprehensive upgrades. So that's exciting too. Another nice thing about this local program is that we're able to work with some of our local workforce opportunities. We're working with Marin City Community Development Corporation to see the different ways that we can bring local folks onto the jobs that we're doing as well. And also, we're seeing if we can use that partnership to actually help them train up some of their workforce to some of the other opportunities that we know are emerging throughout the Bay, not just the programs that we're doing, but some of the ones we see coming down the line for the Public Utilities Commission, so that they're not just limited to our program for opportunity, but can see what else is coming. So that's nice. Some of the vendors that we have already gotten on board for the 2012 program include the Association for Energy Affordability. They're one of the leading contracting firms when it comes to knowing multifamily buildings, understanding the technical potential. They've been very helpful in terms of helping us to really design some efficient ways to identify opportunities at properties. I already mentioned we're working with Marin City Community Development Corporation, both for tenant engagement and outreach, as well as for workforce development. And then we're also working with the Community Energy Services Corporation. They're a nice partner because they handle both low-income projects through the Low-Income Housing Energy Assistance Program. It's a HUD-based program. And also they're contracting with PG&E through the Marin County Energy Watch Partnership to do some lighting. So we think that we may be able to work with them to leverage opportunities, either using them on some of our projects funded through us, or if we have a project that's not a great fit for our program but still has some opportunity for lighting, we can refer them directly to that project and hopefully give that property owner something for the time they spent working with us. So here's the real exciting news I have to share. Barbara, I know you've been waiting for this as well. On October 9th, the Public Utilities Commission released their proposed decision for 2013-2014 energy efficiency funding. And the proposal at this point is to completely fund the Marin Energy Authority efficiency application fully, which is great news. And
Yeah, that's.
part of the reason that makes this such a great opportunity and really shows how Marin Energy has established such a good repertoire with the Public Utilities Commission is that you can compare our application to some of the regional energy network applications, which is the first time that they were allowed to be brought forward by local governments applying to the Public Utilities Commission for funding as well. And while those proposals, and rightfully so, were also given strong support in the proposed decision, there is one program, financing pilots in particular, where the Public Utilities Commission actually requested for the regional energy networks to wait for the state to figure out what it was going to be doing across the IOU territory with financing. But in the case of Marin Energy Authority, they actually gave us the go-ahead to charge forth with our pilots. And I think, given the way that our organization can be so nimble and so quick, this means we're going to be leading the state in terms of these financing pilots. So that's really exciting news for this organization. It also puts us in a leadership position with respect to multifamily programs. The Public Utilities Commission is working to avoid overlap of programs to the greatest extent they can. So if there's already an existing statewide program, they don't want us to offer something that competes with that program or overlaps with that program. The one exception is multifamily. Multifamily is a really hard to reach sector, and the Public Utilities Commission recognizes this. So they actually approved several different approaches, including Marin Energy Authorities, which is a little different than the state approach. What this means is that we're now asked to be involved in a statewide best practices forum. So we're going to have to come back to the Public Utilities Commission probably 2013, middle of 2013, to talk about some of our lessons learned initially, compare across some of the other programs that have been gaining success or learning hard lessons, and help to sort of move the state forward in that regard. So that's great news too. So next steps in the proposed decision, it's not official yet. Reply comments, first round of comments is actually due on October 29th, and we did submit comments to the Public Utilities Commission, both thanking them and commending them for the strength of the proposal, but also pointing out some things that we would have liked to see a little bit differently. And I should mention in that regard, what we're talking about specifically is the oversight that the Public Utilities Commission will have from our programs related to the evaluation, monitoring, and verification of the program. So they want to hold us to the Energy Efficiency Policy Manual, which is not a bad thing, but it doesn't have any language about community choice aggregators. It hasn't been updated to reflect the presence of community choice aggregators in the efficiency market. So we're just making sure that the CPUC is aware that some updates need to be made. After that, we have reply comments due on November 5th. I'm sure you can imagine that a few other utilities, who shall not be named, submitted comments to the Public Utilities Commission related to our proposal. So we have to do a little bit of work to make sure that we can protect ourselves and make sure that the Public Utilities Commission understands where there might be some inaccuracies in some of the other comments that were brought forward. We're looking to have some ex parte meetings with some of the commissioners prior to November 8th. November 8th is the business meeting where we do anticipate the Public Utilities Commission taking action on this.
Now, would you like some of us to maybe participate in the ex parte meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely defer to Dawn, taking the leadership on that.
We are waiting to get a few possible dates from 2 commissioners' offices. As soon as we do, we'll be looping out to bring 1 or 2 board members with us. It would be great if y'all can participate.
So maybe board members can think about that. For those who haven't done this yet, it's a good experience and kind of part of what we do. So
It's likely to be pretty short notice, and it will have to be within the next 7 days.
that's right.
So this is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is set as a rate-setting proceeding, which means that if you meet with commissioners, then there's equal time rules, which I believe is what we're seeking ex parte meetings under, which means you need to have a 3-day advance notice. So there will be 3 days notice.
Monday.
Pardon?
By Monday.
Yeah. But also there's the opportunity to meet with advisors, which is also very valuable, especially in these types of circumstances where, you see proposed decisions be revised in ways that aren't always optimal. So it's good to get in there, so that folks really understand what the program is, and that the face-to-face interaction is very helpful.
And along those lines, we have such a great regulatory team here that's been doing a really good job combing through the plethora of reply comments that come through on the decision to make sure that anything that mentions MEA is caught and that we're paying attention to that so that we can respond to it as necessary. So it's really wonderful. So the good stuff about the program, I get to talk a little bit about what we propose and what we hopefully will be delivering starting in 2013. What I didn't put on here, but what I do want to mention is that starting 2013, we can service any customer in the Marin Energy Authority service territory, regardless of whether or not they're currently a Marin Clean Energy customer. So this means that also we'll be eligible to serve customers in the city of Richmond, or citizens in the city of Richmond, I should say, not necessarily just customers. So along those lines, we're looking to have a multifamily, small commercial, and single-family program elements. We also have our financing program element, as I mentioned, and we'll be working hard to coordinate with regional programs. So that's something to keep in mind. While the Public Utilities Commission did endeavor to make sure that there wasn't overlap between programs, PG&E has a huge portfolio, and sometimes there is a little bit of overlap that happens. So we just have to work really closely with those programs to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the multifamily program. We're hoping to the greatest extent possible to leverage what we're doing in 2012, continue the good relationships that we develop. Hopefully we have a pipeline that we get to develop as part of 2012 and we can fulfill more projects in 2013, 2014. I'm also hoping to articulate more clearly sort of a 3 paths of entry, depending on whether it's a low income or subsidized property, whether it's a market rate property, or whether it's a mixed income property, where there might be some subsidized and some market rate. So that's something that I'm hoping to clarify a little bit more in 2013 as we have a little more funding and more opportunity. Our small commercial program is really exciting too. It's really geared at helping small commercial businesses that don't have a lot of capacity to investigate rebate programs, to bring on energy auditors, and it will essentially offer turnkey services to these entities. It will come in, provide an audit for them, identify opportunities. We can do much more comprehensive measures than what's offered in the PG&E portfolio. So instead of just being able to change out light bulbs, which is what a lot of existing programs do, we also can help take care of building envelope, HVAC measures, things that can be a little more big ticket and harder to replace. And then our single family program is actually completely a web-based energy awareness program. It's sort of an interesting model where it provides homeowners access to information about their energy use, helps make recommendations to them about how they can improve it, and also is integrated with our rebate programs, with financing programs, and with other rebate programs around the area to inform consumers immediately about what some of the opportunities might be for them in terms of saving money and getting rebates for their actions. One of the other things that I think is particularly interesting about the software tool that we're thinking about moving forward with is that it allows the property owner to optimize which measures they want. So is your greatest concern saving energy, or is your greatest concern reducing your carbon footprint? Or maybe you have a child with asthma and your greatest concern is indoor air quality and health and comfort. The software program will actually optimize the measures that are recommended to you based on your chosen set of values. So that's a really nice feature that isn't very common in a lot of these software tools. And again, finally, I want to talk again about the financing element. What we're talking about doing is an on-bill repayment program. This will show up on your bill as a line item that's right there next to your energy charges. And what it really enables is sort of 2 things. For the one, we're going to be able to offer this in all 3 segments, multifamily, single family, and small commercial, helping property owners to finance what they can't actually pay for out of pocket. The ability to offer that integrated kind of program is very unique, and we're hoping that it really can increase the uptake because, as many of you may know, people may want to do the right thing, they may want to save money on a monthly basis, but they don't have the capital necessary to make the improvements right off the bat. The other nice thing about on-bill repayment is that the measures that you've taken to reduce your energy use should result in savings which show up on your utility bill. So the fact that your debt service shows up right next to your energy bill can really help consumers understand, oh, I'm saving the money here, that helps me cover the costs here. And it can create a much better situation in terms of understanding their debt obligations and their cash flow responsibilities. So we're very excited again to be leaders in this area. This will be the first on-bill repayment program that's eligible to be offered to single-family consumers in the state of California, and one of the only 4 or 5, I think, in the country. So that's great news. And then finally, our standard offer pilot program is an opportunity for entities to basically bid into our resource requirements with energy efficiency. So instead of bidding in with distributed generation, renewable generation, they'll be able to say, hey, I see that you need to need this much energy to serve your consumers. How about I come in and provide a megawatt of that energy through reduction, through demand reduction. So there's a lot of details to be worked out about that program, and I'm going to be working real close with John as we do look at those details, but it's also really exciting and also very innovative. I believe this was modeled off of something that happens in Massachusetts. There's a few East Coast states that do this where their renewable portfolio standard, you can actually meet it with efficiency as well as with renewables. So it's been done on a statewide level, but it hasn't been done on a micro level like this, and it could be a really interesting way to allow some innovation in the regional area. So just real quickly, my last slide, I wanted to have a comparison of the distinctions between our 2012 and our 2013-14 program. I'm not really going to belabor this, but you know that it's there, it's in your packet, and you can look at it on your own time if you have any questions. And then I think that's it. There's a few appendix slides that are in the packet if you want to take a look with budget detail and TRC detail, but they're a little wonky, so I left them. So if you have questions, let me know. And that is the rest of my presentation, so I will make myself available if you need any clarifications on anything.
Director Coates.
My question was, I thought I heard you, when you were talking about 2012, say that eligibility was only deep green customers, but in your little chart, it says only MEA customers.
Yeah, I have a problem with talking too fast, so I'm gonna blame that on myself.
I just wanna make sure I understand. So.
Yeah, what I meant by that is that only Marin Clean Energy customers are eligible, and because of the way the Richmond rollout is happening, in the city of Richmond, you can only join Marin Clean Energy by choosing the deep green option. So in Richmond, you have to be a deep green customer to be eligible for our efficiency
As
services.
opposed to rollout.
But that's 2012, not 2013.
That's 2012, not 2013. Although I did hear today that we have at least one Richmond deep green customer. So that's exciting. So we should get in touch with that person and see if they're
All right, Tom.
Help me out with the on-bill program. Is the source of that money, is the energy efficiency money that we got from, what's the financing for that?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question, and I'm glad you prompted that one. So the source of the capital, the majority of the capital will be private party. So we're actually negotiating with financial institutions to bring that money to the table. They basically will lend loans subject to some conditions that we negotiate. What we're bringing to the table from the efficiency dollars is a credit enhancement. And in this case, it's going to be most likely a loan loss reserve fund. So the situation in financing right now is a lot of banks are uncomfortable lending to energy efficiency because they don't understand it. They haven't seen a lot of loans like it. They don't know how to evaluate the risk. And when they do lend, they tend to lend at high interest rates because they don't know what the risk is, so they default to high interest rates. So what a loan loss reserve is it sits unused until there's a default. And then the loan loss reserve, the credit enhancement that we're funding with our energy efficiency dollars, pays for that default so that the financial institution doesn't have to suffer any losses, up to a certain cap. So most likely we negotiate, okay, we'll cover 10% of total portfolio of loans with this loss. And so when you hit this 10% loss, all the loss after that you have to incur out of your capital, but up until that point they're protected.
Where does the reserve come from?
That's through efficiency dollars, through the Public Utilities Commission.
Any further questions?
Can I just make a comment? Becky, I really want to compliment you. You have pulled this program together so quickly. It's really exciting.
It's
fantastic.
really extraordinary.
Yeah. I can't take too much credit. There was so much good groundwork laid before I came, so, yeah.
We'll let her take lots of credit. We're very glad that she's on it.
So Barbara, yeah.
Oh, I have a comment or two. I also think it's wonderful how fast Becky is making this happen. And, anyway, just, I work a different angle of it. I love the, you know, the on-the-ground stuff. And, I'm still back fighting this other fight in the commission. Although I do have a new consultant who's really interesting because he has been part of the federal stimulus programs and financing, and he's actually working on the financing pilots. And you should understand that Marin is allowed to do financing, nobody else is, because they have these financing pilots to try to figure out how to make it work. And so I have an eye into that, which is beyond what I would have been able to do, which was really quite wonderful. Anyway, I just wanted to share with you a couple of the things that I commented on in the WEM comments on the proposed decision. Because as you know, I was really interested in having MEA get all of the money that that would accrue to the customers that we're serving, including now everybody. And instead we're only getting 15%. So I'm still fighting for that other 85%, and we will be fighting probably for years. But anyway, this is one of the things that we noticed in the decision. The decision is full of comments on how awful the utility programs have been. And so, which is moving in the right direction. But here's one of the things he said. Had the utilities been proactive over the past several years and reached out to the local governments to create true partnerships that took advantage of the expertise and viewpoints of the local governments, perhaps the commission would not have felt the need to step in to allow the regional energy network proposals. They didn't talk about the CCAs in this passage. But anyway, they didn't. So what I'm hanging some of my comments on is the fact that the AB 117 statute says that the you know, the commission has to consider certain things in approving or not CCA's programs, and the value of competitive opportunities for alternative administrators is one of the issues that they're supposed to consider. So I basically said that competition means that you ought to have a chance to show that you can do better. But in fact, we're only allowed to do programs in and around the utilities. We're not allowed to compete directly in the areas that they serve directly. So we're all of the allowances that were made, for example, for multifamily programs, small commercial programs, were made in, those are considered statewide programs, and those are off limits to us. But they said, oh, well, the utilities are doing such a terrible job, or it's such a hard to reach sector. So everything was in terms of an exception. But what we're arguing is that limiting alternatives to the areas where utility deficiencies are well known and obvious ignores what we know about the true value of competition, that it can push things to a level previously unknown and unimaginable. For example, Apple came along at a time when everybody was quite satisfied with IBM. So we need to be able to compete directly on all, you know, all levels, and that's what we're fighting for. I do see a lot of the language in the decision as indicating that the commission is finally getting pretty tired of the utilities' performance and moving away from it. But you never know what will happen in the next couple of years, because these programs are going to be, you know, they say we're in a transition, but we don't know where we're heading in this transition. It appears that we have some independence being authorized, but we don't know whether that's, you know, whether that is going to be more independent later on. And I think that it's worth, you know, keeping up this fight in the meantime. So we'll probably file something called an application for rehearing, which is a huge headache, but at least it'll keep the commission apprised that, you know, that this is not satisfactory for MEA or for any other CCAs as far as I know. So.
Thank you, Barbara. Any further questions or comments on this item? Okay, well, great. Well, Don, we'll take direction. Beth,
Yeah, I just want to make a comment also that, that Jeremy has been taking the lead on the regulatory front, and his efforts have been really tremendous, and so I just want to acknowledge his efforts on that front as well.
And again, that's a key piece, so let us know what we can do in connection with the ex-parte meetings or other regulatory actions. Okay, well, great. Let's
Also,
move-
I'd like to thank several of the directors here who have provided us connections and leads to folks that manage property or own property, particularly multifamily property in Marin County. That's been really helpful to us, and we appreciate that. And we're open to more of that, although we have a pretty good handle on some properties now. We're certainly open to hearing about others, and we'll be following up. So thank you.
Great. Item 10 is a proposed resolution regarding MEA and the California First PACE financing program.
Okay, I'm going to make a few comments and then turn it over to Becky to say a bit more about this. As many of you know, the Marin Energy Authority has been exploring the idea of launching a PACE program for a couple of years, and we've gone down a few different tracks to see what would be the best way to launch this type of program, what's the right timing. We've been monitoring what's going on at the federal level and kind of looking at potential legal constraints and looking for kind of a window of opportunity to move forward with this program. We also brought this topic to discussion recently to an ExCom meeting a couple of months back. We've actually had 2 ExCom meetings now that have focused on PACE, and at one of the meetings, we were kind of all walked away thinking that there was a need for some additional analysis to look at the current PACE opportunities, kind of compare one particular opportunity, which is known as California First, which we'll be talking about a great deal tonight, and comparing that to the possibility of launching our own PACE program. What would the pros and cons be? What are the costs and benefits associated with between those two choices? And when Becky joined our team, she was able to spend some time doing that analysis for us. She has a lot of experience working on PACE programs. She's been with the CPUC and the CEC, where there's been a lot of discussion of these types of programs and other finance programs. And so she was able to provide some additional analysis for us and has helped us with recommending some next steps. And as we discussed in the last executive committee meeting, we are recommending at this time the consideration of joining the California First program and assisting our cities and towns with joining that program as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Becky to explain some of the pros and cons that were laid out here in the packet for you and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Also, just a little of my own history. One of my very first, my graduate thesis was focused on PACE programs, and for that effort I did development of an application to the Energy Commission to fund a 7-county PACE program in Humboldt County and the adjoining areas. After that, went to the Public Utilities Commission to work on researching best practices in PACE. Right before I started at the PUC to work on that job, I think it was July 8th, 2010, a date which may be significant to some of you because that was days before the FHFA issued their decision on residential PACE, essentially halting PACE programs across the country. Most recently over at the Energy Commission, I did work as contract manager for 3 of the, at the time, 4 operating commercial PACE programs in the country, including County of Sonoma, City County, San Francisco, and City of Los Angeles. So it's over that breadth of sort of different approaches to PACE that I've been able to develop some of the experiences that inform this. So just so you know, with not necessarily a week's worth of research that went into this, this analysis. I just want to briefly talk about some of the information that is in your packet, so you have an understanding what's before you. One of the sheets is a matrix that we developed that compares first the California First program to doing an in-house regional program. And then the back side of that sheet looks at some of the different options for actually an in-house program, because there are many different ways to do it. You can either go the route of Sonoma, finance things through your own treasury funds. You can go the route of City of San Francisco, City County San Francisco, and essentially look for completely outside financing called an open market financing program, or some hybrid of the two. And so that's what this sheet is. Another sheet that's important to draw your attention to is the California First Program term sheet. And this talks a little bit about the California First Program specifically. So we're here because through this analysis, we really think that there's some value in pursuing the California First Program. And it's not the position of Marin Energy Authority as a JPA to move forward with this program, but really it's for the counties and the cities in this area to take leadership on this issue. And so we're coming through in a supportive position to help provide some affirmation and help the cities and counties know that we've done some analysis and we think that this is a good way to move forward. Additionally, this resolution that you have before you would identify Marin Energy Authority in sort of a county representative role, interfacing with the California First Program. That's one of the other things I have to draw to your attention is that the resolution actually does need some corrections. The one that we sent in your packet identified Marin Energy Authority as the regional administrator of the program, but California First had some issues with this term because legally they're identified as the administrator statewide, and so they prefer that we choose a different term. So we settled on liaison, regional liaison. So that's the term that if we do move to adopt this tonight, we'll have to be cognizant of those changes. Additionally, this is my mistake, I take responsibility. City of Corte Madera, we had to change to Town of Corte Madera. So, still a little green, sorry about that. So with that aside, I wanted to say that when we started to look at the analysis of doing a regional program that we develop ourselves versus doing a statewide program, while it's true that much more of the benefits and local control can be maintained if you do a regional in-house program, it's also true that the investment is on the responsibility of the county and the cities, and the risk is often on the responsibility of the cities and the counties when you do a regional in-house program. And when you look at the opportunity to recuperate some of those administrative expenses through the financing, either through a spread in interest rate or program fees, no matter what, those are dependent on having volume, having lots of applications, having lots of people participating. In 2009, when Sonoma County first launched this program, it wasn't an issue. They had breathtaking volume. People are still pointing to that as such a smashing success of the model. We're in a little bit of a different environment now. There are some significant challenges facing residential PACE that are being debated at the national level, and there are some concerns for commercial PACE as well, primarily related to the subordination of the lien. There is still risk that if the mortgage, if there are certain tenants in the mortgage, that the mortgage holder could call the mortgage if they don't consent to their mortgage being subordinated, and someone does subordinate it anyway through the priority lien. Given those challenges and given the fact that there's not a lot of activity, it doesn't seem like a great environment to invest a significant amount of money developing a program like this. So that's one consideration. Some of the benefits of the California First Program in particular, and why we think this could be a good fit right now, is because this is a program that would be available at no cost to the cities and counties. There may be minimal staff time associated with reviewing some of the resolutions, although we're doing as much as we can to prep those documents so they're as ready as they can be for your boards and your councils to consider. This is a non-exclusive program. If we do choose to go with the California First Program, it does not preclude the activity of another PACE program in the county or the cities, either one you develop your own or another one that you go with a third party who also is non-exclusive. There's also the opportunity to rescind your resolution to opt in at any time and withdraw from the program with no penalties. So all of these are nice things that would make sure that we could have a PACE program available probably around July of next year for those entities that it's a good match for. One other note about the California First Program that is something that resonates with me in particular is that they are requiring mortgage holder consent to the subordination of the mortgage. So it's a low-risk program in that sense. They're very clear with the property owner and the applicant about the need to work with their mortgage holder. They will facilitate that communication. The trade-off associated with that is that it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of administrative lead to do one of these transactions. Sometimes mortgage holders aren't completely sure what they're being asked. They need a little bit of education on the proposition. It also, because it's an open market financing program, it allows the mortgage holder to finance the project if they choose. So it gives the mortgage holder first right of refusal. Mm-hmm.
But as it says in the chart, for California First, it's only commercial, not residential properties, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's a good distinction. The actual documents, the program administrative handbook and the resolution that the statewide program passed are eligible for residential and commercial. They're just choosing not to pursue residential at this point in time because of the uncertainties at the federal level. So if and when those issues are cleared up with the FHFA, they are prepped to do a residential program with no further action necessary.
When Sonoma had it, I know it was different, but they had it as part of their property taxes, I believe. So it sounds like, with this program, it's more connected to the loan, being subordinate to the first mortgage. So would that mean that then it doesn't move to the next person? You know, so I mean, in Sonoma, it would go to whoever had the property, because it was part of the property taxes. With this one, it sounds like somebody would have to reapply, and it wouldn't go to the following person.
It actually is still the same structure of financing. So the open market model means that instead of Sonoma being the one to pay for the project, it's a third-party financer who would pay for the project. The project is still secured by a first priority lien, is still tied to the property tax, and does have all the benefits associated with that. Transfers with the property, alternative underwriting criteria are associated with these projects because they're not evaluating the borrower, they're evaluating the project, and it's tied to the property. So it's okay for it to transfer from owner to owner because a lot of those characteristics that they use for evaluating the financing are still intact.
Is that going to have to be something that the title companies would have to be aware of with a preliminary title report to make sure that it isn't, you know, removed? Kind of thing?
Yeah, that is one of the nuances that is clarified in the program administrative handbook, but it's pretty regular in PACE programs to have title searches to make sure that you're aware that the project applicant actually has the right to bring forward the property for subordination. Yeah.
Is this something that is not available to the city of Richmond residents?
This would be available to the city of Richmond residents, and in fact, the county of Contra Costa has already opted into the California First program. So, city of Richmond could take action immediately if they wanted to.
Irrespective of us?
Irrespective of us.
Because the staff report and the proposed resolution doesn't say anything about Richmond.
That's a good point. This doesn't say anything about the city
Our
of Richmond.
good neighbor to the east.
That's interesting. That's probably an error. Oh no, it's in the signature, but it's not actually
Yes,
in
it is,
the
they get the sign.
resolution. Oh, it is. Okay, it's right there. Yeah. But that does bring me to another important point, which is next steps. Marin Energy Authority can't take action on behalf of the cities and counties to
But
opt
now
in.
therefore.
The cities and counties will actually have to take action on their own. So the next step associated with this, we would approve a resolution just generally providing support. It's more or less a rah-rah kind of a resolution. And we've actually talked to the Marin Managers Association, and we've been in communication with a few of the staffers and a few council members around the area. And the city of Novato is actually prepped to take leadership on this. So we've been working with the city of Novato to get information on the November 13th council agenda. So they're looking to move forward with that. County Marin would be next. In order to opt into the California First program for this region, for it to be available in the Marin County region, the county and a city need to take action basically before the end of this year so that we can be included in the phase 2 opt-in of the statewide program. After that point, they'll prepare validation actions to take the structure of the financing before bond counsel, who can validate that it's good and sound and will uphold in the secondary market. At that point, any city who wants to can choose to opt in, and they don't have to be on a timeline. But in order to make the phase 2 opt-in of the statewide program, we need at least the county and at least one city to take action. So it looks like we have the city of Novato prepped, and we have been working with the county as well, and they're good to move forward with us as well. So we should be available with that.
You're on our agenda.
That's great.
That's
Good
action.
news. Good
That's
news.
action, that's good.
And one point of clarification is that the reference to MEA serving as the regional liaison for the program is really something that would be offered to all cities and towns, including Richmond, to kind of serve as an intermediary between the city or town and the folks at California First, who are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but there's going to need to be some translation. Already we've been doing some assistance, quite a bit of assistance with helping to craft the staff report, helping to kind of modify the resolutions so that they fit with our local cities and towns. So we'd be offering those services to all of the member agencies on a continuing basis.
Director Bud.
You know, based on what you said about Contra Costa County, maybe this is irrelevant, but, it raises some other questions that I'll ask you later, but, probably this resolution needs to be wordsmithed a little bit. The second whereas talks about the following Marin communities, and it lists Richmond. And while I'd like to be in Marin, I don't think we can make that happen by resolution. And then further down, under the therefore be it resolves.
The actual resolution.
Under the first one, it talks about each city within Marin County to opt into, and so you might want to just clarify that. But I guess the other thing, maybe I'll go ahead and ask this now. So if Contra Costa County has opted into this, does that mean that Richmond could participate right now, but that Richmond needs to opt into it also? And
Richmond would need to pass a resolution establishing their special district boundaries as coterminous, but.
And by the same token, does that mean that each city in Marin has to individually opt into it in order to participate? Okay.
Ultimately, if you want the financing available within your city, at one point or another, you'll need to move forward with a resolution.
Okay.
So those are good points in terms of wordsmithing the resolution.
So I have a question for you, Becky. So if you need the number of cities, can you send to each of our respective city managers the information they need so that we can, because there's not a lot of time left to get on people's agendas. This is November and not a lot happens the second half of December. So there's like 1 or 2 meetings left for all of us this year to make this happen. So if you need this to happen this quickly, we need some information sent to our respective city managers. That'll help.
Sure, so 2 points of clarification, one of which is that the time sensitivity only relates to one city in the county. And so we have worked out, we're on the Novato agenda, and we've been working with the county Marin, so everybody else should be able to move forward at their leisure.
They're
if
not
there is a
reliable,
desire.
no.
Well, there is that, so.
All right, well, but even if there's not a rush this year, then at least help us by getting the information to our city managers, because there's always at least at the small cities, there's some sort of lead time to get on the agendas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
And we have actually, we did pitch to the Marin Managers Association and brought along with us the supporting materials that they might need to move forward with this. But we're happy to follow up directly with the city managers.
I'd suggest, just because they have full agendas, send it to them and copy each director for the respective city so that we can then spur the city manager, and that will help make that happen.
And send us a
Appreciate
copy, send us a copy of what you said, ma'am.
Exactly.
So or at least. Let me mention, I have to actually leave to pick up my daughter at the airport, but, I don't know, looking at the resolution, I may be ahead of ourselves, but since I have to leave. The paragraph 1 is a meaningless thing. The board hereby voices its support, which is kind of a funny thing, that the county, Marin, and city should pass. I mean, voices its support is, I don't understand exactly what that is intended to say.
Yeah, the purpose, would you like me to respond?
Well, I suppose what you want to say is the board supports the cities and counties, the board urges the cities and counties, the boards.
Encourages.
I mean, but is any of that really, is that number 1 really, is it really do anything?
Yeah, I think what it does is it provides some leadership and some comfort to the jurisdictions within our area that we are there to serve as a liaison, and that our board has directed staff to serve in that capacity. So it means that if a city or town or the county wants to go forward with adopting a resolution, which is more of a legal requirement to have the program go forward in your community.
Well, I'd rather see language other than hereby voices its support. I don't, hereby supports, hereby urges, hereby.
Yeah, I think that's a fair edit as well.
So hereby urges, The county we're in, cities within Marin County.
But it's saying encourages.
Yeah, or just plain supports.
Hereby urges
Supports,
that no
just
other
supports.
Okay, so that's.
Well, that doesn't really, grammatically, that's not
Well,
great.
you understand what I mean,
Yeah.
so.
Encourages would be better.
Added.
We always understand what you mean.
No, okay, so I would say encourages.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I like that.
Executive decision. And you also need to, per Director Bud, so the board hereby encourages the county of Marin and each city within Marin County,
And-
as well, and the city of Richmond, to opt into the, et cetera, right?
Or we could just say within MEA jurisdiction.
You guys get the idea, I'm sure you can figure it out.
Any further comments on this? I mean, overall, are people supportive of California First participation? Okay. Barbara?
Do that.
Well, you know,
I mentioned before that, one is Energy Matters as a new consultant that works on financing, and, I think I mentioned in the tech meeting a couple months ago that, my consultant is very, leery of the PACE program. And I had hoped to get more information on, his position on PACE before now, and we haven't, I've been insanely busy, and so is he, so I don't have that yet. I really strongly urge you to wait one meeting. I don't like the feeling of being pushed, by California First. I wanna, call your attention to the fact that the program issues bonds on behalf of the applicant. So the financial, on behalf of the applicant and the financial institution, but requires applicants to find a lender. I think that MEA, while we may not be, liable for this, we could get a black eye from it. I mean, I know there's a lot of people around the state and probably even around the country who are really interested in PACE. What I heard from this, my consultant, would scare me, and I'm kind of shocked that Novado, which was so risk averse, is going forward on this.
Well, it's on our agenda.
Yeah, well, anyway, I really strongly urge the board to put it off one month. That's, we'll still be able to make it in by the end of the year. And I wish I could tell you more. I don't have that much information, but as Becky mentioned, there are certainly a lot of major questions out there, and one of the things that he said is that the commercial properties that have gone ahead with PACE are companies that basically don't have a mortgage. So they can go ahead with PACE, they can go get a loan. But if you have a mortgage, he also warned that this, clause that they're saying, while the mortgage holder can waive the requirement, and you get them involved by saying they can provide the loan, he said they can rescind that, and still call the loan. So we certainly would not want any of our businesses to get stuck on something that goes bad. And I just think that rather than rush into it this month, let's wait one more month. I'll try to get you the information so that you can evaluate it. Because there's very few people who are willing to stand up and talk about PACE, because it has very high-level friends in California political circles. But there is a scam involved from some of the folks who put this program together that I'm very, very concerned about.
So if I can respond to that real quick. One of the things, there's a few things in there that I just want to ground in how they would work in this program. The concept that this program is issuing bonds is absolutely correct. That's the way that the financing mechanism is characterized. It's the authorization to place it on the property tax. So in the open market model, what's happening is that the project applicant is working with the program to essentially structure a mini bond, which the financial institution then purchases. So in the case of Sonoma County, what they do is they make little bonds for every project that they do, and then they sell them on a monthly basis to their county treasurer. and their treasurer essentially purchases the bonds and holds them. In the case of this program, what happens is each individual project applicant negotiates a bond transaction with the private financer who then buys the bond from the project applicant. Another thing that I think is really important to distinguish about what you're talking about is the idea that the mortgage holder could rescind the mortgage. That's absolutely true if the mortgage holder doesn't know that they're being subordinated or is subordinated without giving consent. The important part about the California First program is that they require the consent of the mortgage holder so that the project applicant doesn't have that risk, or at least is fully aware of the fact that going to their mortgage holder and asking them means the mortgage holder may say no, and that then they can't move forward with the program because it requires mortgage holder consent. So there are PACE programs operating in the state right now that don't require mortgage holder consent. They may require notification, and some of it is called affirmative notification, as in you just send out something to the mortgage holder, and if you don't hear back from the mortgage holder, then you assume that you have consent. And those programs I'm personally very uncomfortable with because it's allowing a private financial institution to essentially make a profit at the risk of the project applicant. So I think it's a very good point to keep in mind, and there are some programs happening right now that aren't very scrupulous. The fact that this program is backed with a statewide partner, California Communities is working in conjunction with the third-party renewable funding. And the folks who are involved, one of the main founders of renewable funding is Cisco DeVries, who's actually working for Mayor Tom Bates in the city of Berkeley and actually came up with the concept of PACE programs initially too. So there is some good sort of public agency representation with the California First program, which also helps bring a little bit more comfort with them than some of the other models which are completely driven by private financial institutions. So, but I would be happy to connect with you
Well,
too.
renewable funding is really the source of a lot of the problems that my consultant is concerned about, so it is, but it's very heavily politically connected. I would just advise you to, wait a month, because he also said that, even though they get consent, that isn't necessarily gonna stand up. So that's a problem.
We're to understand the county is in support of this, is that correct? And Kate, is the county concerned about any of these issues that Barbara brought up?
Well, John, you should probably talk about conversations you've had with Matthew.
Yeah, I've met with Matthew on this on a number of times, and the county is very supportive of going forward with this program. I think that, first of all, there's been a lot of discussion about this program, many opportunities for input, public input, and jurisdictions to provide input at our executive committee meetings, and then in our loop outs to the city managers, and some of the one-on-one meetings, including the meetings with Matthew. I think what to sum up why there's interest in moving forward is, not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. We've endeavored over the last 2 years to find a perfect PACE program, a perfect PACE option, and it doesn't exist. And we've looked high and low, and we've even tried to think of how we could create one ourselves without too much of a pull on the agency's resources, and we haven't been able to do that. This program isn't perfect, and I think we're clear on what the imperfections are, but it's a good step forward, and most importantly, it doesn't preclude us from taking other actions later that we could perceive to be better when resources allow and we don't face the legal constraints that currently exist. So,
It's not sufficiently imperfect that we would get a black eye if we support it?
yeah, we feel quite confident that it has enough support throughout. It's been vetted through 18 jurisdictions have joined already to date throughout the state. So it's been very thoroughly vetted by a lot of different institutions, and we've thoroughly vetted it internally with folks from looking at it from a lot of different angles. So we're comfortable that it doesn't put us in a risky position in any way, but it does provide an opportunity. I think what's important to keep in mind though with this program is it's not going to achieve significant results right away. And that's one of the reasons why it's not perfect. We will be very pleased if we see 3 or 4 applicants in the first year. So I think we need to be clear that those are the expectations to pass along to our communities. This is not the PACE program that launched in Sonoma and had such tremendous success and participation initially. It's simply, there are too many constraints that will limit the size of the program at the beginning, but it is a first step, and as those constraints diminish over time, we'll be able to build a more robust program.
And regarding those constraints, there's nothing, I shouldn't say there's nothing, but over time, I assume that we will eventually be able to move to a residential-based program. Because last time I checked, that's only maybe 98% of our market.
I think, yeah, that depends what happens with the federal level in this program, but it doesn't preclude us from doing what Sonoma's doing and just charging forth into the residential model anyway on our own dime if we wanted to.
Well, I just mentioned to my fellow directors that last time I checked, rent's pretty much a bedroom community with lots of houses, and ultimately, I would think that our goal promoting energy efficiency and opportunity for people to get solar panels on their roofs, we need to get a residential component to this, if not now, at some point in the near term future.
May I just say a couple of last things. One is that this would be the first bond that MEA is associated with. I want our initial bond to be a roaring success. What happened in Sonoma when it first launched was before the feds said, you can't do this. And this, as I mentioned before, this has such a high level of political grease.
Barbara, wasn't that was residential?
No, this is both residential and commercial. That but this is so politically hot potato, that's why you haven't heard any opposing voices. The person that I've talked to is actually working on the financing committee. Most of his recommendations for the financing pilot were accepted. He knows what he's doing, and he knows that there's a major, major problem with this program. I wish I could describe to you more of what it is. I promise you, I will get that information to you in the next month. I just couldn't do it before.
Barbara, do you think those issues are gonna be resolved?
No, they're not gonna be resolved. I mean, there isn't, having.
So what will you come back and tell us? They have been resolved and we're.
Well, the mortgage, question, the fundamental question is whether, banks are gonna allow somebody else to be, to come in front of them on mortgages. It's just
In
not
this
gonna
program,
happen.
they ask for them by going in subordinate, so it's not happening unless you ask the bank to do it, so it solves that problem, but it's moving.
But that doesn't necessarily stand up. So anyway, I promise you I can get you information. I know that there is some information that you would really want to know if you would take a month to listen for it. That's what I'm offering.
One thing I wanted to respond to is the idea that we need to provide options for the residential market. And while the PACE issues are being worked out at the federal level, we are trying to move forward with other options such as the on-bill repayment model. We're negotiating with the financial institution as to whether or not they have an appetite for allowing the debt to transfer from property to property and essentially be tied to the meter instead of individual borrowers. And if we are successful in negotiating an arrangement that works to both parties' desires, that could be a really nice substitution for PACE at the local level. One thing I think we learned in the state of California in 2010 is that diversifying the options that are available is always a good idea. So I think in the interest of providing more than one possibility, that's something to keep in mind.
Any further comments? Okay, what's the board's pleasure in terms of this item calls for a motion we'd like to move forward?
I move to approve the motion.
And if we could also include in the motion the changes that were recommended.
With the various editorial changes, recognizing that Contra Costa County, excuse me, Richmond is in Contra Costa County. We'll recognize that as a judicial notice of that fact.
Credible amendment.
Okay, did we have a second?
I'll second.
Yes.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain, Chair.
Okay. One abstention. That matter carries. Item 11, addition of 2 staff positions.
I'm going to say a couple of words of introduction, and then we're going to hear from Steve Guy, who is our human resources consultant. As we are a growing organization, growing quickly, we have some growing needs, and historically we've been very careful to add positions only after we see a clear, likely ongoing need on our staff team here at MEA. We've had 2 extra hire positions that have been in place now, one for about 3 months and one for about 3 weeks, and we're seeing that there's a need for continuing the support that these services have been providing to the organization. So Katie Geyer's been assisting us with looking at options for expanding our team and assessing what we already have happening with our extra hire positions, and is going to give you an overview of the item before you here.
Okay, thank you, and haven't seen you for a while, but I'm happy to be here tonight. As Dawn had mentioned, there's additional work that has come to MEA from the full rollout in 2012, as well as adding the city of Richmond and the possibility of more jurisdictions being added in the future. What we looked at is how the work could be assigned, what it would look like, and where these jobs would fit in within the organization, the existing organization. Dawn and I met and talked about what the work would be of the jobs, and working with Dawn's staff, develop the 2 job descriptions that are in your packet, the internal operations coordinator and the program coordinator. The next question that came up is where they should fit within the organization. With the additional positions, the organization was, even though the number of staff is fairly small, there's a lot of contractors, and it was becoming fairly flat with too many reports to Dawn. And supervision and management of staff is one of the biggest responsibilities within any organization, and the successful supervision and management of staff is directly contributes to the success of the organization. So you have an organizational chart that shows 5 direct reports to the executive officer, and then the programs that fall under those. And the new positions that are being proposed, recommended for your approval tonight, are the internal operations coordinator, and that position is one of the middle management positions that is responsible for a division and reports directly to the executive officer. The other one is a program coordinator, and that job reports actually to 2 different programs, the communications director, the public affairs program, and the energy efficiency coordinator for the energy efficiency and local coordinator, or local programs. And as you heard from Becky, that program is growing rapidly, and having additional assistance there is really important. So the recommendation is that you approve these 2 new staff positions of internal operations coordinator and program coordinator, and the compensation ranges that are listed on each of the jobs, and that they give the authority to the executive officer to appoint at a level within that salary range. And the salary ranges were established by looking at the work that ADP did before, as well as internal comparisons within the organization. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Have these positions, are the 2 new staff members these positions, or?
They're extra hire in the positions, and they're in the employee handbook. There is the option of hiring without a posting, and so whatever the organization decides to do, typically in this situation, I would imagine that they would hire without a posting being done, and there is authority to do that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify. We've already hired the positions. our two new staffers are?
They're extra hire,
Yeah, we have
so
two-
temporary employees.
We have two staff. We, among all of the staff, two of them are in an extra hire classification, so we don't actually have a position created and assigned for them yet. This is kind of similar to how the County of Marin uses the extra hire position when there's a temporary need, and the extra hire category is used to fill that need, and then if it moves into becoming more of a long-term need, then a position is created. One of these positions is currently filled by a person who was with us as a Climate Corps volunteer for about a year, and as his time was set to be over as a Climate Corps, he wasn't completely a volunteer, I should say designee. His time was sunsetting in July of this year, right at the time we were going to be enrolling a lot of customers. So we knew that that would be a really bad time to lose someone who was particularly doing a lot of our local outreach. And we found that this, so we asked him if he'd be willing to stay on an extra hire capacity for a number of months to help with the enrollment of new customers. And as he's been with the organization, there continues to be a heavy workload and a strong need for that position to continue.
Where's the program coordinator position on the org chart?
It fits, there are two places where you'll see it. So it's the name, this might help, is Rafael Silverblatt. So you'll see him under local programs. So he's working with Becky on launching the energy efficiency program. And then you'll also see him under the communications director because he's doing a lot of help with outreach. And I'm glad that we're talking about this position because Katie has been very helpful and we've worked hard to kind of delineate who's on what team. Rafael is the only staff member who currently is in more than one group. And we really tried to pin him down to just one, but he was serving a really essential function on the communication side. He coordinates and participates in many of our outreach events in the community where we do tabling. He's also overseen the work of our new Climate Corps volunteer, Alex, who's also with us today, who's doing a lot of our Richmond outreach, a lot of the same work that we've been doing in Marin, but now taking it to Richmond. So Rafael is helping to coordinate that. So that's a very strong communications function. He's also supporting Becky in her efforts around energy efficiency because, as you can see, Becky has a very big job, a lot of tasks on her plate. And so having some support, particularly with someone who already has inroads in the community, is really valuable. And having Rafael work a little bit in each of these camps is also helpful because there are peaks and valleys in each area. And so when there's a lot going on the energy efficiency front, he can really devote up to full-time on a week or two basis for that, and then shift gears and help backfill on the communication side. So currently he is listed in both places. Over time, as we grow, we will likely have a full-time need in each area, and we'll fill that with another person in the future.
And Dawn, if we add these two positions, how many total employees does the organization have?
12.
12, with the two new ones?
Yes.
And do we see, like, do you have an anticipation of what the total employees will become with Richmond rolling out as customers next year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we have historically been very conservative in our hiring, and if you go back and look at every budget report for the last 2 years, you'll see a sentence there that says, we've been under budget because of hiring delays and conservative growth on the employee front. So we don't want to jump to any conclusions and say, okay, by June we know we're going to need this many people. We like to see what the need is, make sure that it's there, and then create the position to fit that need. Our business plan, which I'll bring up because our business plan has had kind of an uncanny ability to be accurate and to play out. And our projection under the business plan was that we would need about 20.1 full-time staff at full rollout. I think that some of the work that we have ongoing for the agency is still being done by external consultants. And in some cases, that's the right way to do it because we don't need a full-time person necessarily at a certain level of expertise. We might need only a 20% time person with a high level of expertise, and then maybe another 20% of someone that's has a different expertise. And so If we were to convert all of our consulting positions into full-time positions, I think we would be around 20 staff, maybe a little bit higher. Over time, we will be transitioning some of our consulting work into in-house positions, particularly around scheduling and more of our resource management functions. But what we found is that the matchup between having a staff and a key external consultant is really working well. And you'll see this is one other thing that's helpful to point out. In the light green boxes, the biggest boxes going across the page here, you'll see the list of team members, which are our staff, but then you'll also see the external team listed there. Those are our key consultants, and you'll see that we have key consultants in every single area here that we draw upon as needed for critical functions. We have APCO and Noble Energy Solutions in the communications area. In energy efficiency, we're working with AEA and Rin City CDC. In internal operations, we are using Katie Geyer, Maher Accounting, Prime Mover, a couple of others there. In our resource coordinator area, we have John and Kirby providing consulting services to us at a very high percentage of their time is devoted to that. And then on the legal side, we have regulatory legal support through Douglas Lydell and others. So that really supports the internal staff team that we have and has worked well for us.
So the answer is we're at 12. The business plan calls it 20, but we may not quite go that high because we have such good external partners. Is that what that meant?
Yeah, I anticipate, to give you a more clear answer, sorry about that. I went on a tangent there.
Okay. That's good, I got it.
No, but I do have a more specific answer. I do expect that by next spring, we may have a need for 2 additional positions. I do foresee a need for some additional community outreach in Richmond potentially, and we may need some more support in the resource area.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, follow up. So essentially, it's the same number of employees, they now have an official job title, an official position.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. And I prefer
and also-
outside consultants. I prefer keeping the overhead and benefits down. Anytime you can have an independent contractor or consultant, I support that wholeheartedly.
I mean, there is one new position being filled with Emily.
Right, Emily is extra hire right now, so she's been, she came on to assist us with internal operations coordination. So she is currently part of that 12, but both her position and Rafael's position would be classified as a position with MEA. Now, it's worth mentioning, and Katie will want me to mention that we are an at-will employer, so that doesn't mean that any of our employees have assurances that they will always be an employee in that position. But the position will exist because it's been authorized by the board. At this time, we don't have a position in existence for the internal operations and for the program coordinator. So we will be creating those positions, and if at any time the folks working in those positions no longer are with us, they could be filled without coming back to the board. So what you're approving is a position that will remain with the agency.
So then the mid-level position that is unfilled right now is resource coordinator.
Sure.
What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, that is a position that your board created last fall. It was in November of 2011 that position was created. We knew at the time that we would not need to fill it immediately, but we were speculating that it might be necessary to fill in February or March of next year around the time of our open season process. And we were able to delay hiring in that position, primarily because we had a lot of support from our external consultants, and we were still at a pretty modest level of contracts in place that needed to be managed, and negotiations with counterparties was manageable at that time. We've seen a real increase in that activity and a much higher need for support in this area. So we actually opened a recruitment for this position about 3 weeks ago. We've received quite a few resumes, a couple that look like a good fit, and we're actually going to be interviewing for that position next week. So we expect that we may be able to fill that position in the next month or two. but no
Any further-
action is needed on that.
Okay. Any further questions for Don? Comments, members of the public? Okay, and you're looking for a motion, Don?
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right, opposed? That matter carries.
Thank you.
Thanks. Item 12, board and staff matters. See none?